Great. So that said, I want to introduce our moderators for today, Fariha Khan, and Fariha, you'll take it from here. Thanks.
Hi everyone. Oh, it does work. Yes. I'm Clara Khan. I want to start by congratulating all of you on your incredible and extremely timely films and for premiering at DWF Films at the iconic Chinese Theater. It's a big feat, so congratulations. So this year at DWF, we have movies dealing with every step of a woman's experience, from conceiving a child, to sex, to a woman's right to choose, to birth, to miscarriages. So the whole spectrum of something that a woman does go through. So really excited to have this conversation with you all today. So we have Bonnie, we have Bonnie Rose from Lady Parts, Nate Hillgardner from No Choice, we got Ron from Here and Now, Tayana Perka from Conceiving, Clara, and Leah Pascal from The Greatest Joy. Cool. So just to get started, I wanted to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, what you did in the film, and then describe your movie in 30 seconds.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we've been doing this all week. Hi, my name is Bonnie Gross. I'm the writer and executive producer of Lady Parts. It's based on my own true story of moving home with my parents to get vaginal surgery, where my vagina becomes a family affair. And it's a comedy, you can laugh. And at the heart of it, it's really about her relationship with her parents and her relationship with her own body. But, you know, we're also here to educate and kind of take that stigma away, because it's just a part of our body we should be able to talk about. And we should be able to say words like vagina and vulva to talk about things when they're in pain.
I'm Nate Hillgardner, writer and director of No Choice. No Choice is a psychological horror drama film about abortion access. It's about a young woman living in a state that has recently criminalized abortion. Condom breaks, she gets pregnant, she starts having terrifying, surreal nightmares that she's going to die. But the real nightmare, the living, waking nightmare, is being in a state and a situation where healthcare has been criminalized. And unfortunately, this is a more and more relevant film every day.
I'm Leah Ron. I'm on 2 hours of sleep, so let's see if I can do it in 30 seconds. Okay, we world premiered last night. Director, producer, participant, one of the participants of Fear Now. Fear Now is my personal journey across the United States and unintentionally into myself. It's around birth. It's a film about birth, unlike anything that's seen before. It shows how we can actually enjoy our births within the current broken maternal health care system, and how important it is to acknowledge, process, and release our birth traumas that are so normalized in our society that we are not aware we carry them, which is what happened to me toward the end of filming. I realized I was carrying my own birth trauma. For my first birth, that was more than 30 seconds, and I don't know if it. Okay.
Hi, I'm Tayana Perka. Our film is called Conceiving, Clara, and it is inspired by my own journey with my partner and husband, and our way to become parents. And it follows Clara, who's a midwife, who is able to give birth, to help give birth to so many wonderful babies, but she cannot have a baby on her own. And she goes down this route of trying for a long time, and then does IVF, and the cycle really spirals downwards. And we were thinking to talk about our own story and say that it also can be maybe covered in a way that is not a comedy. We've seen wonderful comedies about this topic, but we haven't seen actually somebody talk about how lonely this way can be, and how isolating, and how just really, really dreadful. And we were very, very lucky to have a happy outcome, and I think this was also more than 30 seconds.
I'm Leah Pascal. I am the writer, director, and producer of The Greatest Joy. It's a short film. It is a comedy about a miscarriage, based on my own experience and my husband's experience. and just the epic boredom, loneliness, trauma that happens with all of the experience of losing something that you're extremely joyful and hopeful about, but also that there's humor in every experience. Based on a feature, I'm really happy to be here with all of you. I think it's very cool that we're doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. So all of these films tackle extremely important issues. And Leah, maybe you can start since you have the microphone. I would love for each of you to speak a little bit about why you made this film and what you want people to take away from it.
Sure. I mean, I had written the feature basically because my agents were like, please write something personal. And I said, okay, here you go. My husband and I had experienced a lot of difficulty getting pregnant, and then we finally got pregnant. It was really exciting, and then to lose like a fetus, or whatever we're calling it these days, there's so many different terms, a non-viable pregnancy at 10 weeks was really shockingly dramatic, and also a massive process for him as well. And I think it's really important, obviously, to be talking about women's issues, but also no one was talking about his experience and what a relationship goes through. And I really wanted to write a rom-com where two people sort of were together, came very far apart, and then came back together because of an experience. Most people who have read it said, this is not a rom-com, and I think that's probably true. But it was really cathartic to write, and also I got so many responses from every gender having feelings about this, and a lot of women sort of saying, wow, my experience too, and I've had multiple, and my mom's had multiple, and nobody talks about it. Why is there so much shame? Why are we not talking about this? And I really wanted to do it with comedy.
Yeah, so I think I've already answered a few things about it before, and what was really important for us was also what you're saying, to open up, because it was a long way. It was like over 5 years of trying, and at the end, when you start IVF, you actually start already then from a point not really of happiness and positivity. You're kind of already drained, and you want to have this baby, but you don't know if you can trust yourself anymore. And there's social pressure, and there is like questions along the way, and there is like so much that goes on your body and in your wallet and everywhere, and then your relationship. And it's just like, at some point I couldn't anymore, and I started talking about it. I literally didn't even talk to my husband for so long, and he was the first. And once we started talking to each other about our feelings and making clear it's not normal to feel this way all the time and to do it, and maybe there's other people, we started talking to our friends, and then it was healing and at the same time heartbreaking to hear that a couple that we know in Germany, best friends of my brother, who had literally invested their whole savings. They invested almost 100,000 euros, and this is no joke, I'm not joking, and they ended up with not a baby, you know, and they just went like from one round of IVF into the other. And I know also another couple here, friends of my husband's, you know, they couldn't stop, and she just so wanted it, and every woman so wants it who does it, you know, and then she ended up with psychosis, and those hormones are really heavy on your body. So I really, really wanted to talk about this part. And now that we started actually screening in Toronto, Vancouver, now here in Los Angeles, I think what's really, really, really hitting me is how many women after that come to me and talk about their stories. It's like, it's kind of beautiful, really, and we share tears and we share hugs, and it's fantastic, really. So yeah, I think if our film does that and continues doing this, then I'm happy, and I think it needs to be talked about. Yes.
This is what compelled us to make the film, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I was not going to make a movie. This is my first film. It's a documentary feature. I was always defined myself by my fear of birth. I had basically phobia of birth. I had my first birth was traumatic but not acknowledged because I was healthy, the baby was healthy, moving on, as we all do. And there's obviously guilt and shame around, how dare you call it or even feel that it was traumatic because it wasn't a near-death situation, you move on. Then when I got pregnant again, I was more terrified. I discovered this childbirth education method called hypnobirthing, which sounded very strange and too crunchy for me. I took a class only because it promised enjoyable birth. I was a good student. I did the practice, which was actually amazing, and made my pregnancy amazing. I had an amazing birth. I almost, as pain-free as can be, huge baby, intervention-free. I sort of designed and customized the birth. I wanted it in the hospital and in a certain room, and the hypnobirthing is a lot about being in charge, being in the driver's seat of your birth. It is not that complicated if you have the right providers. It can be even with an elective C-section. That's what's so amazing about it. So I found out that nobody's ever made a film about it. First I thought it was just me, and then I realized it's a typical hypnobirth, and I decided to tell the world. It's a method that's been around for decades, and most people don't know about it. And I called it the revolution from within the system because it's a lot about the subconscious and releasing fears that we're not even aware of, and the fear, tension, pain cycle, which I can talk about later, but also because the maternal healthcare system is so terrible, and we need to know that. There are actually a bunch of birth justice movies that everyone needs to watch. They do educate us about how a maternal mortality crisis, terrible. But if you're pregnant, or if you ever want to have a baby, they fill you with most fears. And that maybe you come out of the film feeling lost, and what do? So Fear now shows what we can do now without having to fight the system. It is possible. And then, what happened that I unintentionally released my first birth trauma on camera, so it became the second theme of Fear. Now, it's less just, let's have enjoyable births, let's enjoy our births, but also let's process and release our birth traumas, because we don't realize we carry them. And the impact of carrying them is heavier than we can imagine, because most of us carry it. So, two themes that I feel like are very important and hopefully will shift our birth culture.
So, unlike every single one of these wonderful women up here beside me, I made a film that was not based on my personal experience. I have no direct experience with what the protagonist of our film goes through. However, this I think it actually is part of the reason why I wanted to make the film. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, I remember being shocked and realizing, oh, these people really want to roll back human rights in this country. Even if it's not something that directly affects me, that is an important thing to take notice of. I think it's an important thing for men to take notice of. I think it's an important thing for those of us who are not immediately implicated in the rollbacks that are happening, not just to women, to take notice of. The film is about a women's issue, but it's also about economic inequality. It's about a young woman who doesn't have the resources even to travel out of state, as many women living in those states do. So I hope that people who don't live in the socioeconomic realm that our protagonist Amy lives in, I hope that people in other countries will take notice of the problem that our protagonist goes through and will be affected by it and moved by it. And I hope that it will raise consciousness and inspire change.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. This is very, very inspiring. We're on. Oh, no, it's okay. There we go. So again, this was based off my own personal experience, and I kind of agree with what you said. It was a very isolating experience. I had what's called neuroprolific vestibulodynia. It's okay if you don't know what that is. I had too many nerve endings at the opening of my vagina, meaning anything touching it would feel like a hot knife digging in. And everyone thinks, oh, it's just about sex, but no, it's like my well-being, sitting, wearing pants, riding a bike, God forbid riding a horse. And tampons, you name it. And I kind of got put into the system where I was medically gaslit for years. When I was 19 years old on a college campus, I was told to drink a glass of wine before sex as the cure. And when I said, well, I'm 19, they said, well, you're at this college campus, find someone with a fake. I've been prescribed psychotic medicines like Xanax, I've been told to calm down, I've been told to try yoga, and I'd love to say that this is just my experience, but the more and more I found that I talked about it, I wrote a blog post about it, and started kind of sharing my story, I found that this was a very common experience, and you know, I think it's 16% of women in the US have vulvodynia, which is vulvar pain. 1 in 4 people with vaginas will experience chronic vulvar pain at some point in their lives, whether that be through a condition like mine, menopause, birth, puberty, trauma. There's so many reasons why, and it's so much shame and so much stigma that even myself, I didn't feel comfortable talking about it. You know, I got what's called a vestibulectomy surgery, where they remove the affected tissue. I had a lot of stitches in my vulva. I couldn't even sit like I am now because that's too much pressure on the stitches. Legs together, I moved back home with my parents who had to take care of me, and that's what the movie's about. And I come from a very privileged place to even be able to tell this story, to be able to say I had very supportive parents, I had the financial means, I had the background to be able to even access that care, and it was so hard for someone that looks like me and comes from a place that I do to even access that care. And so this is a very, very systematic, deep-rooted problem. And really what it came down to me was I wrote this blog post kind of about my journey, and I got a lot of people kind of giving me that same feedback of like, wow, I kind of have a similar story, or I know someone going through this. This is really, really, really interesting. And so, you know, I took a one-way flight to Los Angeles with a dream and an air mattress, and I started writing about it and going back to school. And I just found like the more and more I put it out there, the more and more people responded, you know, becoming vulnerable themselves, whether it was this experience or I heard some birth, IVF, like very similar experiences. And, you know, especially with the medical gaslighting and the shame and the stigma. And so now that we've kind of put Lady Parts out there, and this is our last festival, we've been doing festivals for like a year and a half now. Well, a lot of people also come up to us, and that's kind of like how we know like there was success in the movie, because people come up and they really relate to it. We're hugging, we're crying, we're laughing. They're telling me some crazy story that they'll leave, and I'm like, oh, I don't know their name. I know everything about the vagina. This is really cool. And, but I love it. You know, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And so I'm just so thankful and grateful. Thank you, dancers. Thank you guys for having us. Thanks for giving us a platform.
Bonnie tells the truth. I just sat next to her and started telling her my problems 5 minutes ago. Okay, so, you know, in the process of creating your films, I'm sure there was so much research, so many conversations with experts. Leon and I watched your film yesterday, and, you know, there's a whole hypnobirthing institute. So I'd love for you guys to kind of talk about a little bit of that research process, getting in touch with these advocacy groups, and what you learned and how that impacted your filming.
Yeah. So I'm actually part of a patient advocacy group called Tight-Lipped, which I know, incredible name. And it's all a grassroots organization of vulvovaginal pelvic pain patients like myself. And we're coming together not only to make community, but we're also working right now with OBGYN residency programs. Right now in the US, there's no OBGYN residency programs. There's no mandate to teach vulvovaginal and pelvic pain conditions. Hence, you're going to these gynecologists who are, you know, the first line of defense, and they have no idea how to even treat us and how to take care of us. And so we're really working to kind of make a difference there. And to be honest, when I first started writing the film, I didn't know anybody else with this condition, except for our amazing director, Nancy. That's how we initially connected, because she also had vaginismus, which is another problem that I deal with and is present in the film, which is the involuntary spasming of the pelvic floor muscles. So it's like, we always say it's like thou shalt not pass is kind of the thing, like it's almost like a wall goes up and like nothing can enter. And again, so many reasons that can happen. For me, it was due to pain because of the nerve endings. My muscles would just automatically spasm. I went to pelvic floor therapy. Everyone should go to pelvic floor therapy. It's incredible. We were just talking about that. But I'm trying to remember where I was going with this. Oh yeah, research. I didn't find tight-lipped actually until after the movie because I was running the Instagram account and kind of came across, you know, like things you might be interested in, and I was like, yeah, it's all vaginal content now. And I found them and I was like, oh my god, like I wish I had found you guys earlier because it's a bunch of patients and are, you know, storytelling, hearing other patients' stories, and it was like the most validating thing because everything I thought I was experiencing in a bubble turns out that like this is a very common experience and we really need to make our voices heard and continue with storytelling. And, you know, I was able to tell it strictly from personal experience and, you know, research I was doing online at the time. There's not a lot of research, I know, shocker. Not a lot of research, not a lot of funding. Health insurance doesn't cover it. The surgery was like 10 grand, they called it cosmetic. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do. But the first, you know, the first step we can do is like storytelling and putting it out there. So thank you to everyone here too, like it helps.
So the research process for No Choice was also sort of scary. Roe vs. Wade was rolled back 3 years to the day after our world premiere. So it has not been very long, but it's been a blinding pace of events. And as I was writing the script, new laws were being passed, new cases of women going through horrible situations were coming out. And we wanted to be very specific about every hurdle that Amy, the protagonist, goes up against, but we also wanted to be a little bit vague about what state she's living in and what laws specifically are on the books in that state. Because unfortunately, for the foreseeable future, this is going to continue, and so the movie needed to sort of be future-proofed so that it could continue to speak to a shifting reality and a shifting terrain. But if you see the film, I think it has a sense of place without specifying what state she's in, and I think the mood of paranoia and terror, not only among women but also among medical professionals, is pervasive in the country right now. That's an unfortunate reality. As far as advocacy groups go, we have gotten a little bit of attention, and we were very fortunate to have a group called Indigenous Women Rising join us for our world premiere, and the feedback from them was incredibly positive. And we hope to partner with there are a lot of women's advocacy groups fighting a good fight on this cause. We hope to partner with more of them. We hope to get opportunities to screen with them, and we'll be in touch with them soon.
You mentioned the Hypnobirthing Institute, so I'll focus on that. Yes, research was just how, you know, the impetus to hypnobirthing was this story about a doctor in England that went to a birth in a village in the early 1920s, I think, and he came to a birth and the woman refused chloroform, which was used to as a painkiller for birth. And at the end of the birth, he asked her why did she refuse it, and she said, "It didn't hurt, doctor. Was it supposed to?" And then he theorized the fear, tension, pain cycle and published Birth Without Fear. And then Marie Monken in 1989 wrote the book Hypnobirthing and started working with this method, which is, the name is terrible because you think somebody hypnotizes you. It's actually the opposite, it's putting you in control. So I did all that research, and I needed the Hypnobirth Institute to be on my side, because in order to make the film, I needed to use copyrighted materials that are very, very protected. They do not allow anyone to use actual scripts of the relaxation tracks, which I used. The Fear Release track, which is 20-something minutes, was never published, and I have a few minutes of it throughout the film. And just one example, I got their support. I was able to use archival material and also the copyright material, but I made it very clear to them that this is a film from my point of view that is very personal, and it is not an infomercial. They were very, very excited because there was never a film done on hypnobirthing, but I made it clear, and I'll give it to them, even though it was, you know, it was sort of like getting to know them and them getting to know me, but they had to put the trust and let me do it. And I'm sure that, you know, there's some hypnobirthing educators that think that hypnobirthing is only for natural birth, but I actually show that it's for any type of birth, including C-section. So that was my research, and that's hypnobirthing. But now, as we are launching our social impact campaign, we're partnering with various organizations, brands, and corporations, that the film can be used as a tool when we're trying to get to people who birth, but also to physicians and of all kinds. And really, this was, I'll say one more thing. When I went on this journey, I was focused only on the birthers' fears, but then as I got an inside view of doctors' fears, and I have more compassion for them than before I made the film. I realized that I had my own stereotypes of, you know, the white male doctor. No, and the film really shows that we should judge by how people make us feel, not by identities. Identity politics kind of confuses us sometimes, really. So I have some amazing white male doctors in the film, and there's some terrible midwives talked about in the film. So we just have to really choose our people according to how they make us feel. And how do we not know that? You know, we're so overwhelmed with information of how we should feel, and we just need to connect with ourselves.
So, research on conceiving Clara was spent on myself. So, it was very thorough, and I went very deep, and I can really tell you a lot is possible on these wonderful drugs, especially when you already start from a point of no return and really feeling like not at your best, let's say it like this. And then you start with these hormones. Truth be told, it's dark, because I was prone to depression. So I was already depressed, I would say, or I had prenatal. We are talking a lot about postnatal depression, but there's also something that's been now more and more discovered, like the prenatal. And I'm sure I was one of those women who was there. And I started those drugs, and it was hard. It was really, really hard. And I had many fights with my husband, and they went really far. And there was one situation where I ended up with, like, literally, I don't know if I should say this, but we had a fight, and I lost myself, and I ended up with a knife in my hand.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. He's sitting there, and I don't know what happened, and I was like, okay, I think we have to talk. This is not good. I was so out of myself, and this sounds really funny now because it's over, but it wasn't funny back then. Really, it wasn't. And this is actually the time where I stopped, and I had a year pause, and I had to reflect on a lot of things. And so this was my own research. So then I started talking, and then I started talking to friends, and then I heard about psychosis, which I mentioned before. And I know this doesn't happen to every woman who goes through IVF. And I have a friend who did end up with a baby, and she had a very fantastic time, and she is really, really a very strong, very stable person, and she doesn't like to talk a lot about emotions at the same time. So I don't know, like, I'm not saying it happens to every woman, but it does happen to a lot of women, and it needs to be talked about. It's one point of IVF that has not been covered. It's the second point of IVF that's not been covered is the financial aspect. Like, a lot of women who want to go through IVF never get so far. There's like a popular actress, you know, she went through 5-6 rounds of IVF, she said, and she's so happy she's with a baby. And I'm so happy for her. She missed to talk about the aspect of that this cost her around $180, probably to $200,000, right? Which cannot everybody afford. And so it's kind of like not true that you can just do so many rounds and then you just have a baby and it's so easy. So there is a foundation. It's called Baby Quest. We just literally found each other here in Los Angeles. They are situated here. They have helped so far many families with $3.5 million already to have babies. They're supporting families who desperately are trying and can't conceive, and they're helping them financially to go through IVF. You can look up Baby Quest, please, everywhere on social media, and if you can help them with as little as you have. And even if you just share the word and, share maybe to your friends who are looking for help, or maybe just share on your social media, I think it's a great help for them. I think they're doing fantastic work.
Can I just say I really enjoyed this therapy session? Research was personal. I had a miscarriage. I have also done 2 rounds of IUI, 1 round of IVF. I also had hypnobirthing classes. I also have a mom who's a hypnotherapist. I strongly relate to the really incredible people in the medical field and also the really garbage ones. It's a spectrum, just like all of our experiences are a spectrum. I would say that the best part of research that I did was having conversations with other friends and family who had had miscarriages and talking about what it felt like for them and what the non-just physical part of it was, but what emotionally they went through. It was also really helpful to talk through it with my DP, because the process of figuring out how we were going to film this and tonally how we were going to make something funny was really processing how this happens to women, what the process is for people, like what the differences are, and helping somebody else understand it who may have never experienced it. So that was all part of the research for me. In terms of organizations, we would love to hook up with an organization. We are currently not with any organization. I would love for more information to be about what your body goes through when you have a miscarriage, just hormonally what you should expect, what your partner might go through if you have a partner, what your friends and family can do to support. I mean, there's a lot of information around that. I had somebody who came up after the film and said, he's gay, and he had said, as a gay man, I've had so many female friends who have gone through this, and what they mostly said was, I need you to bring me food. And I was like, I completely understand. Like, there's this lack of understanding what the inside looks like. And I think it's very, very helpful to talk about these things, but also there's a ton of shame and there's a ton of misunderstanding. So just having something you can watch that says, this is what's happening on the inside, maybe you can relate and then know how to behave on the outside, is hopefully educational for people. You know, we don't want to be an infomercial either, but we do want to be a place that people feel they can relate.
No, definitely, and even if it is, a woman's issue, not every woman will understand it unless they have to go through it. So having something like that to understand how we can support our friends and our family is so important. So this question is a little bit more for Leah, Nate, and Bonnie. I know your film is a comedy, No Choice is a horror, your film is a comedy. So speak a little bit towards, how you made that decision. It's a heavy topic. You wanted to bring some levity to it, but how did that influence your filmmaking as you kind of explored a genre on top of the topic?
I'm sort of only capable of doing comedy these days. I feel like I did stand up for a long time. I was an improviser for a really long time in Chicago. I came out to LA to write TV comedy, and everybody wanted genre writers. They were like, women in genre writing, that's the way to go. So I wrote a bunch of sci-fi. It always turned out funny. And I was like, okay, funny sci-fi, weird niche. And this was when the conversation was like, please write something very, very honest and in your voice. And I deal with difficult things with humor. That's how I grew up. That's how my family is. It's how my partner is. Nobody wants to watch something really, really depressing with no levity. They just don't. I mean, ultimately we're in entertainment. So as much as these issues are super, super important, they have to be palatable in some way. And being able to laugh at any part of the experience, like I said earlier, is healing. For me, it was a chance to laugh. It was also a chance to process, but really it was a chance to say, the trauma is not the only thing happening here. There's also silliness. There's also weird interactions that you have with delivery drivers who bring you things. There's also your lovely partner going, I have no idea what to do. I have no idea what to do. And you're like, me neither. And you're sitting in this awkward space, but there's humor there and there's levity there. And I think it also keeps us from criminalizing people. Because when you see someone experiencing something and being able to laugh at it, and other people going, oh yeah, it is weird and funny and difficult, it makes it easier not to be like, you're evil, you did something wrong here, you flushed your non-viable fetus down a toilet, that makes you somebody I should arrest, which happened in the South and ultimately was my experience, is like, that's what made sense to me to do. Other women have buried things, other women have released a feather into the wind, other women have lit candles, other women have done sage. There's a million ways to release that. Yeah. And for me, it was kind of like funny how it had to happen, and it just felt like the only way to tell the story.
So the idea for No Choice basically came in a flash. I thought about the person who would be affected by these laws, and I said, that person's living in a horror movie, and then it's like, oh, that's the movie, you know, that person's living in a nightmare. Okay, what are nightmares telling her, you know? And we had a great time creatively coming up with these richly symbolic dreams for her to experience, which are the horror element most vividly. But I think people have noticed watching the movie that what's really scary in the movie is her real life, is her waking existence under these laws and under this state of paranoia. With that said, the movie in its bones is really a drama. It's really about characters. It's really about character relationships. And it's about a young woman, it's a person who's failed by her community, but it's a community that's not full of bad people. Her mother is, loves her and is addicted to pills and has a very restrictive and limited religious ideology. Her best friend, who provides a lot of the levity in the movie, speaking of we need levity, doesn't quite understand what she's going through because he's a man. The other men in the movie, the other minor characters are all going through something in their own way that precludes really seeing this person and what this person needs. So there's a way that it's a dark film and a bleak film, but there's also a certain amount of hope in the human spirit buried in these character relationships, and I hope people will notice that when they see it.
Awesome. I'm very similar to you. I have a comedy background. I came here to write TV comedy, and here I am with like an indie feature. It's just what happens. You start writing something you're really passionate about, and you start writing from the heart, and that's kind of whatever happens, and you're like, this is the story I have to tell. For me, it was a very cathartic experience, not only writing this and then like making it, sharing it. There were so many phases to this, and I also use comedy to cope with everything. I mean, it's like the oldest rule in the book, like Shakespeare times. You can't have comedy without tragedy and tragedy without comedy. And I think what's really special about Lady Parts is you have these scenes where you'll be laughing and crying all within like the same beat. And I think that's what's really special, is that's like real life. You're sitting on this sit staff with your mom shaving your legs, and you're like, we're laughing, we're crying, everything's just kind of happening all in like this crazy one moment. And that's just kind of how life is. And I was really excited when writing this because I wanted it to feel as realistic as possible. And I'm very, very lucky, like I said, to have the parents I have who were overly supportive of my vaginal journey. And I think what I want people to take away from that is, this is how you can be a supportive parent, this is how you can be a supportive partner. Because they don't know it, they're not going through it, we're all navigating this odd, weird thing together. And it's weird and uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, like, we're still human beings who can laugh about it, cry about it. And what's really special is, like, as our main character kind of becomes more open and vulnerable with her journey, like, everyone around her becomes open and vulnerable, including her parents, partners, like, other people. And it's really special to see how this film is kind of doing that too, and how I'm sure all of your films are doing the same thing. And I think comedy is a really powerful tool to do it, because we're not just sitting here spitting facts at you being like, well, 1 in 4 women have blah, blah, blah. Like, it's important, but you know, at the end of the day, what you're really connecting with is the characters and the story, and that gets you to care about the message, because you're realizing, oh, this could be my best friend dealing with this. This could be my partner. This could be my daughter that happens to be dealing with this, and comedy is a great tool for that.
Absolutely. And then, you know, for the films that are based on true stories, which is almost all of them, how did you guys decide, I guess, like what to fictionalize or show in a more artistic way than the grueling reality that it was? And then for the more fictional films, like how did you really think about what's happening in reality to bring some sort of truth to it so that it feels like it could, you know, it can be something that can be on the news?
Yeah, pretty much the only 2 things that are not true in my movie is I do have an older sister. I'm not an only child. My sister was living in Boston at the time I got the surgery, and also we felt like it would make more sense for the main character and the parents' relationship for her to be an only child. It was just, again, it was a story choice.
Right.
But the relationships and all that are still very real, and also just the timing of things, because, you know, movie magic. You don't want to sit there and watch me on bed rest watching Game of Thrones. No one needs to watch that. We're going to speed things up. We're going to change the storyline around because it's a 100-minute, you know, comedy drama film. And I think, you know, obviously there's stuff that happened, like you take creative liberties because you have to. You're making a film. You're not making, you know, and especially making a narrative feature. We're not making documentary. So, you know, we still have to entertain. We have to keep you, you know, invested in these characters and these relationships. So, you know, you're not seeing, you know, me go to the doctor 20 times before they offer surgery because we don't have time for that. Basically that's the only differences, but it is very true to life. I thought it was really important to keep those really personal, intimate details in there. Like, I slept on an air mattress for 3 years. That's true. My mom did shave my legs while I was on a sitz bath. My dad held my legs together with a belt one time to help relax my muscles. Like, stuff like that I think is really important to keep in because it just humanizes it in a way that we can all relate to.
The story of No Choice is fictional, but there are a lot of Amy's out there. There are a lot of people going through what the protagonist of this film is going through. As I said before, we were deliberately a little bit murky about what state she's in because the pace of the change of laws is so quick. And in certain ways, the film is set 5 seconds in the future, and frighteningly, we're going to get there very soon. So it's fiction, but it is true to a reality that we are trying to call attention to.
I don't know if this is very relevant because, my impetus to make the film was the hypnobirthing, and in terms of developing the story, I definitely did not know what I was carrying, the birth trauma that I was carrying, and when it did burst out of me, I honestly was not so sure that I wanted in the film. But then I realized that it's impossible that I'm the only one that's carrying birth trauma from, let's say, a normal birth. And I decided to make it that second theme and go all in and include footage of what was happening to me throughout filming, which again was not anticipated at all. So it wasn't just about hypnobirthing; it was also a birth trauma theme.
So what happened is I co-wrote the script with my partner, Clara, who directed, and we went through many rounds of writing, and it changed a lot, nonstop. And at some point we couldn't see how to continue, and we went actually to genre. We thought like, oh, it has to be a ghost story, actually. And then we were like, oh, it has to actually be a horror. And then we were like, no, let's go back to basics. Let's go back to us, you know. Let's go really back to what we know how to write. And what survived is a story where the main character, Clara, is based on me, and what she goes through really covers the emotional background. It does not cover all the specific acts, if that makes sense. This is a combination of fiction and what happened to me and what happened to friends and family that we talk about. And definitely we cover the relationship, the hardship of the relationship, which again is not one-to-one, but it covers a lot of the darkness. Which is interesting, is like we covered also the mother-in-law, which is a very important aspect in that whole story. And she's a very strong antagonist, and she's wonderful. And a lot of people went to my real mother-in-law and went like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that you guys have such a bad relationship. And she is now like very scared. And she's like, oh my God, they all think that's us. And there is parts, you know, that's the thing. We both know there's parts of us in there, but it's not us. This is the wonder of creative writing, that the spirit is there, but everything else is really what it becomes and what it has to become. And so yeah, to answer your question, it is very much inspired by our own journey, and it is very honest, and it is still a fictional story.
Incredible.
My husband plays the guy in the film, so it was pretty accurate. But I did cast like a hot blonde actress, so that was fictional. No, it was the biggest thing that we did to avoid making it too realistic was to omit the actual miscarriage and only have about 12 seconds of pain. We didn't want to have, I mean, she spends a lot of time in the short in the bathroom, but we wanted the time in the bathroom to be everything but the actual physical pain. So we only showed a little bit of it, and then there is like a final scene where essentially she does choose to flush her unviable fetus, but it's all shot from behind. So you don't see her face, you don't see anything in the toilet, you just see the action. And that sort of, I think, made it realistic for people, but also gave space.
It's real. So I want to be cognizant of time. So just two more quick questions. This one is a little bit open-ended. So, you know, you guys are here. Congratulations. I'm sure it's been a huge journey. I know your son was born in, you said 2017 or 2018, so yeah, and
Surgery 2016.
Exactly, so it's almost 10 years. So it's been a really long journey to get here. If you could go back in the beginning of this process and tell yourselves as, you know, the writers and the creators, you know, how this would all turn out, what advice would you give them? What do you wish you had known when you started this off that you have learned throughout the making of your films?
Anybody want to take that first?
You got it. Great. Yeah.
Advice I would give myself.
Yes, advice that you'll give yourself. And if this feels like, girl, I need to go to therapy before I, you know, figure this all out. I know you guys have all been doing so many of these panels and asking questions. If there's any question that you feel like a panelist hasn't asked you and you'd love to talk about in regards to your films, you can use this as an opportunity to answer that as well.
Thank you. Okay. First thing I would tell myself was trust your instinct more, get more B-roll for the editing process, and congratulations on actually pushing yourself to do it. I was 36 weeks pregnant when I shot this, and my producer was like, do it now. You will not have time when you have a baby to do this. And that was like the biggest and best piece of advice that I had gotten. It was like, don't wait, you can figure out the money later. Just shoot the thing, get it done while you have the time, because you never know how, especially speaking to your film, you never know how laws are gonna change, things are gonna change, the external world is going to change, so make the thing now while it feels relevant, and you never know what happens.
Absolutely.
In terms of how we did it, I think it was a process and a process. So I don't think I could change anything, because yeah, it is what it is, and it all belongs together. In terms of my younger self who was going through the process of IVF, I would tell myself, hey, have an open conversation with your doctor. and ask them what could happen and tell them a little bit more about how you feel like and tell them, because I never talked about it, you know, I was always like, how are you? I was like, oh, I'm so good. Oh, yeah. You know, I was like, do I know? And I would be like, no. I would have to sit down and be like, you know what, actually really have problems going through the process, and I'm having these nightmares, and when I'm away, I always feel like there's this big battle over my head, and I can't connect to people anymore. What is happening? Help. So I think that would be great, and I would also tell my younger self, but I can also do this now as my older self, to tell them like, hey, maybe you guys need to have a few more, you know, therapists in there who actually talk to people while they go through the process. I mean, with people, women, right, who have to really go through it. So that's something that I would do. Yeah.
My husband was saying that throughout the process of filming and finishing post-production, it almost mimicked the process of practicing with hypnobirthing. So I actually, there is this line that I tell myself that I also told myself practicing for the birth is, I know what's gonna happen. And that's a personal thing, I know what's gonna happen, so it's sort of focusing on the feeling that's gonna happen after, and that sort of leads me through and exactly envisioning it. And so the process of, you know, it was like long labor. You could call it conceiving also, the film,
Yeah.
but it was years that I had many moments of fear and, you know, dark moments of how is this gonna happen, but I never gave up. I never gave up. And I always told myself, you know what's gonna happen. So I know what's gonna happen, and the revolution is coming.
So making an indie feature is an insane thing to do. It's insane. It's my first feature, it's our whole team's first feature. I made this movie with my cousin and my parents as co-producers. We did not know what we were getting ourselves into. We jumped into it with both feet, not knowing what we were getting ourselves into, and many times throughout the process, we looked at each other and said, if we had known what we were getting ourselves into, we would not have done this. And so if I could go back and tell myself anything at the start, I would tell myself nothing. Because not knowing and jumping into it has landed us here.
Yeah, true.
And so I'm just so grateful for that confident ignorance with which we set out to make it. With a good script, I'll say, you know. It's important to have a good script. But with a good script, we set out not knowing what we were doing, and we've landed here, so. Yeah.
And having a lot of people reading your script, a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
people involved.
So many people involved, and so many, of course, so many women who read the script and lent their perspective to it, which I could never have come up with, because of course I have no inner access to that character's experience. And especially our lead actress, Hannah, who lent that character life and made her what she is. That team of people made it possible, and we all went into it completely believing in it, and here we are.
Same story here. I feel like this was a bunch of our first feature, my first feature, and this was an 8-year process. I got the surgery in 2016, and I started writing in 2017. We started even like casting in 2021, shot in 2022, and yeah, I don't want to tell myself anything because it's terrifying. It's like the most stressful thing you could ever do is make an indie feature film, especially when you're like, oh, I'm the person people go to with all the problems. I can't go to someone else. Like, I was like, yeah, there's a problem, I have to fix it every single time. This is terrifying because, you know, but I'm very, very lucky. We had an amazing team behind us, an amazing casting crew, an amazing village. It takes a village to make a film. And, you know, everybody really believed in the story. Everybody believed in what we were doing. And I think it really shows when you watch it. But I guess like the main advice, like from a non-film perspective, is I tell myself to go to therapy, which now I'm in. But yeah, even when I was on set, I would like sneak off to take like therapy sessions, and I'm very glad I did that. And I feel like that also kind of needs to be normalized, especially when you're like telling a traumatic story, or even these film sets. Like, it's so hard to be there. I mean, you're on set for like 14, 16 hours, and you're constantly bombarded, and you're constantly like dealing with problem after problem after problem. Like, yeah, you deserve 30 minutes to kind of unload and be someone to check in on you mentally. But yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. It was, I don't know, it wouldn't have happened if I'd known about it, so I'm happy, like I said, I also dived in and was like, let's just do it. And I'm happy we did, we're here.
We're happy you guys all made them as well. Thank you so much. And I guess last question for the filmmakers. What is next for you? I know it's everybody's favorite question. But what is next for you as a filmmaker, and where can folks tune in to watch all of your wonderful films?
Yes, we currently don't have distribution. This is actually our last festival we're playing. We've been doing this for about a year and a half. I'm exhausted, and our team's exhausted. And you can find us on Instagram at ladyparts_film. We're very, very active there, and we're always posting about upcoming screenings, events. If we are distributed, if we're on streaming, you will find out immediately. Trust me, everyone will know immediately. But yeah, that's the best way to support us. Again, I'm really passionate about vaginal healthcare. Please go support Tight Lips. They're an amazing grassroots advocacy organization fighting for change for patients just like me. And then on top of it, the next project I want to do is another thing I deal with, chronic yeast infections. Everybody will get a yeast infection at least once in their lifetime, and we don't talk about it. The last time a medication was made in the 1980s, right when women's hysteria was taken out of the DSM. We still have, like I said, something as common as that, and it's still a stigmatized topic that we can't talk about. And so I'm really excited to dive into that next.
No Choice is having its international premiere on Sunday, June 29th at 5:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time in Manchester, England, as part of Gas Horror Festival. We're very excited to be screening across the pond, and hoping people in England will go see it. Beyond that, we are also actively seeking distribution, and we look forward to updating everybody about where the film can be seen very soon.
fearingourmovie.com is our website, and there you can find anything from upcoming screenings. We're going to go all over the country, also how to host a screening or sponsor a screening. There's also the partnership kit there, which any organization or any entity can partner with us. What else was that? Yeah. Oh, IG, Fear in Our Movie. You can find a lot there. On the website, you go and sign up for updates. And upcoming projects is two in development. One documentary. I think my genre would be personal. It's my first film, but this is I'm comfortable with personal, universal. So one is called Healthy is the New Sick. It's about our wellness culture. Healthy is the New Sick documentary. And then a narrative, fiction but not fiction, sort of like a real story that's based on my mom's book about our family going through the Farhud in Iraq. Yes.
So for Conceiving Clara, we have been nominated in Canada, British Columbia for 4 Leo Awards. So this is going to be the next station to beginning of July to see what's going to happen. We're nominated for Best Film, Best Actor, Director, and Writer. And then we hope that we can share the film with more audience. And as for our next project,
But July 1st, we go on Hollywood Suite in Canada.
oh, July 1st, we go on Hollywood Suite in Canada.
In the US, we're looking for distribution.
And so in the US, we're looking for distribution. Thank you, Tarek. Yes, so we're looking for distribution in the US. Tarek and I, we're working together since a long time. We have shot, this was our 3rd feature. We have a few more in post-production, in ready to shoot, in production. Yeah, one is a story that is based on Tarek's escape out of Afghanistan many years ago with his mother on the back of a truck. And we're intending to work with real refugees, which he already has. He has shot a short film just last September in Tajikistan. And we hope out of this short to really go into very soon into the production of the feature. And there's a lot of activity for both of us. We're very interested in very character-driven and human stories. So there's another story that we have just in development. It's a story of one of my best friends in Germany who had to bury his father after his father and his mother have given him away for adoption. And there is a right, it's a law in Germany, it's called blood right. And it kind of like almost forces you into a position that, you know, you have to pay for the funeral, even if you don't have the money, and if they couldn't. So that's something that very much interests us, and it's another feature. And yeah, you can look us up at aquatetrafilms.com. Thank you.
TheGreatestJoyFilm.com. That's where you can find me. On Instagram is The Greatest Joy Film. I'm gonna write a book. I am tired. This is our first film festival. It's our first short film making the circuit, so I have a feeling that we're gonna be hopefully on the journey for a little while, but for right now, we're just starting it. So TBD would love money to make things and new reps. So spread the word.
Yay! Okay, thank you guys so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Go for it.
I just like 20 seconds, and I'm
Absolutely.
speaking for all of us because I forgot this to say before to your question before. What would you do? And I was thinking, why I said nothing is because in a way you learn after you finish a film that it is a film, and you have to start to love it.
Yes.
And if you don't love that end product, you cannot stand behind it, and it is your baby. And even if it's a baby with many mistakes, you know, it's okay. You have to really accept it and love it. And while you go through that process, you many times think maybe when you first time see it, you're like, shit, this and this and this and this. And I agree, like there's so much this I should have changed so much, but you really, at some point, I think you're kind of like fall in love with it, right? And you're like, that's it. I love my baby.
Yeah.
And that's why I said I would not. And I think it's important to know this and to share it with like filmmakers because it's a hard process to get there. To not really beat yourself up for having done it better, maybe another way. No, it is what it is, and it's good.
Thank you all so much for coming.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is great.
That was
This
amazing.
was awesome, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was so fun.
Wow, that was